a Let Me Learn introductory video aimed at educators by Let Me Learn Malta. This video aims to provide all educators with an overview of the Let Me Learn process and the theory behind it, and how it is implemented in the classroom. Part 1. What is Let Me Learn? Who am I as a learner? Let's start off by a few words about the Let Me Learn process. Let Me Learn is a theory of learning. It helps us understand how we take in the world around us and make sense of it. It is a process that enables us to reflect on our own learning profile and how this is different for each and every one of us. And that is why it is a process that gives us the opportunity as educators to reflect on our perspectives about learning, which might differ from others, and on how we and others approach learning tasks. We then move on to reflect on how the personal learning profile impacts our own methodologies. Throughout the whole process of Let Me Learn implementation, we differentiate by learning patterns, which have an influence on the way we process information and the way we do things. And that is why we focus more on the learning patterns of the individual rather than his ability. Let Me Learn doesn't stop at identifying the individual's learning profile, but throughout the whole process of its implementation, Let Me Learn provides strategies that one can implement in order to maximize the personal and others' learning potential. How is the Let Me Learn process implemented? We start off the Let Me Learn journey by understanding who we are as learners. The first step is to fill in the Learning Connections Inventory, or the LCI. The inventory consists of a set of questions that the individual answers on a Likert scale basis. You can see a sample of such questions on the right. There are two different ways how you can complete the LCI. You can either fill in a printed version of the LCI, which we can provide, or else one can access the online version from personallearningcoach.com. You can refer to the videos in both Maltese and English explaining in detail how to access and fill in the online inventory. I have completed the LCI. What is the next step? Once you have completed the inventory, you will be provided with 4 scores. Each score corresponds to each one of the 4 learning patterns that make up our individual learning profile. To the right, you can see an example of a teacher's 4 scores corresponding to each learning pattern. What do these scores mean? If I get a score between 7 and 17, I avoid that learning pattern. If I get a score between 18 and 24, I use that learning pattern as needed. If I get a score between 25 and 35, I have a natural first preference to use that learning pattern. But what are these learning patterns? Which are the 4 learning patterns? One of the 4 learning patterns is sequence. If I have a use first sequence, therefore a score between 25 and 35, most probably I need clear directions and examples when doing my work, and I find it difficult to follow without clear instructions. I need enough time to plan, to finish off planned work, and to practice. Organization and neatness is most probably a priority to an individual who is high in sequence. If, on the other hand, I avoid this learning pattern, therefore my score is between 7 and 17, most probably only a few of these characteristics describe how I learn and how I do things. Another learning pattern is precision. Precision is associated with reading and writing. If I have a use first precision, therefore a score between 25 and 35, most probably I need detailed and exact information when working on a task. I need opportunities to ask questions, to know more about the topic. I need opportunities to write and explain in length, and time to revise for mistakes. If I avoid this learning pattern, therefore my score falls between 7 and 17. Most probably this is not the way I learn, and less of these characteristics describe me as a learner. Another learning pattern is technical reasoning. A learner who is high in technical reasoning most probably would need relevant knowledge related to real-life experiences to be able to learn more effectively. The learner would also need opportunities to construct models to show skill or knowledge, and activities that involve problem solving and the search for practical solutions. The learner who is high in technical reasoning would also most probably appreciate opportunities to work alone. On the other hand, if my technical reasoning is at the avoid level, less of these characteristics would describe me as a learner. Another learning pattern is confluence. The learner who is high in confluence most probably would need the bigger picture rather than the parts of a plan to be able to start to work immediately, asking for directions at a later stage. The learner would most probably need space where to explore his original ideas and take risks with them, and opportunities to express himself in an artistic way and in front of an audience. Again, if my confluence is at the avoid level, this would not describe me as a learner. So we have completed the inventory and have 4 scores, each corresponding to the 4 learning patterns. What is the next step? Educators reflect on their own scores or learning profile and how this impacts their methodologies and their relations with others. Here we would also like to point out that our learning profile is not defined by our highest scores. We use all 4 of the learning patterns at different degrees, and each one of these 4 learning patterns are influencing each other. Therefore, if, for example, my colleague and myself have a use first sequence, it doesn't automatically mean that we are individuals who prioritize organization and neatness and who like to plan and who would appreciate detailed instructions before embarking on a project or on a task. Because other learning patterns are also impacting the way we do things and influencing our learning profile. So this is why we need to look at the 4 learning patterns in combination with each other. This is a discussion that we have with educators during our training sessions, where we discuss and reflect on our learning profile and try to answer further questions like, what do I understand by learning and how do I learn best, keeping in mind our learning profile. How are my learning patterns influencing my methodologies? How are the people around me different than me? How is my learning profile impacting my relations with others? And how did my learning profile impact me as a student and now as an educator? These are different questions that we sit down and reflect on, keeping in mind our own learning profile and what it means to us. This is an example of how an educator would reflect on his own learning profile. If my score are a 29 in sequence, which is at the use first level, a 30 in precision, also at use first, 11 in technical reasoning, which is at the avoid range, and a 19 in confluence, which is at the use as needed range. If I have these scores, these might be the characteristics that describe me. Most probably I thrive on knowledge and note-taking, and this would be the way I believe studying should be done, for example, because I have a use first in precision. I do not find hands-on work as important as note-taking, because my precision is much higher than my technical reasoning. And I find it hard to come up with ideas for fun activities without making a deliberate effort, and sometimes I might perceive such activities as a waste of time as well. Therefore, how does all of this impact me as an educator? How am I different from the learners in my care? How can I better reach my students? These are questions that we ask in order to reflect about my own learning profile and how it relates to that of my students. And that brings us to the end of part 1 of this video. The next step in the Let Me Learn implementation process is to understand who my students are as learners. For a discussion about this next step, please refer to part 2 of this video.